Hello and welcome. In this video I'm going to show you how to set up an RCL control system pretty much from the start. A few prerequisites to start with then. You will need an iPad with the RCL Control app downloaded, and you can download this from the App Store quite easily. You will also need an RCL Control Mediator box installed and connected to the same network that the iPad will have a Wi-Fi connection to. That is so that the iPad can therefore see the Mediator box on that network. You will also need a handheld controller with the wireless pairing mode enabled. If your remote does not have wireless pairing enabled, you would press and hold the two buttons on the side, press the back button and OK, and then swipe through and enable wireless pairing, which is on page 15 of 15, and you press up and down to enable it. And therefore you should see a little tick in the bottom corner. Then you can press back and you'll see it in the menu. You will of course also need a number of RCL Control enabled remote controlled lighting spotlights, either DRX5, DRX1 or DRX2. Okay. Let's say you have all these things already installed. Your lights are plugged in, they have power. Your iPad is connected to the same Wi-Fi network as the Mediator box is connected to its network. Let's head on to the iPad now. I'm going to boot up the RCL Control app. I open the app by clicking on RCL Control. This is the welcome screen that you will see. You can either set up a new system if this system has never been installed before. You can connect to an existing system if there is already one there and you want this iPad to also control it, or import configuration from a file. It's possible for RCL Control's iPad system to actually export everything that you've saved as an email file, which you can then import to another RCL Control Mediator box. Great if you're changing mediators or you want to move it and something happens along that journey and it breaks and you need a new mediator. You don't have to reconfigure or reinstall everything from scratch. Just import that file and all of your settings will be there. In this case, I'm going to connect to an existing system. I tap on that. Then I get a list of the mediator boxes that this iPad can see. In this case, it's just the one, so I click on it. And now I need to enter the system password. By default, it's always set to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. But of course, you can change that password if you want to. And you click Connect. You'll notice here we have a gallery. Currently, we don't have any floor plans in it. To change this, I'm going to click on the Edit button in the top left. I'm going to enter the same password, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and click Connect. It's now going to speak to that mediator box, and I can see now I have the potential for two zones. In this case, I'm only going to use one zone, so I'm going to press the cross in the top right of zone 2. I'm now going to click on the plus button below zone 1 in the little square, and it's going to ask me where I should select a background from. My choices are a blank page, the iPad's file system, a camera, so I could take a picture of a space, the camera roll or photo library in case I already had a picture of that space. I'm going to select files, and that brings up my file library, and I have a little file here called Light Plan. I'm going to click on Light Plan, and now I have a few that I can pick from. The one I'm going to pick from is Claridge's floor plan. And you'll now see that we have the wonderful Claridge's Ballroom's floor plan on the main screen. You'll notice in the top right that we currently have 0 lights. I think it would be a good idea to start adding some lights. So I click on Light Plan in the top right, and I can rename the light plan here. But what I want to do is start adding lights. First off, let's have a look at the lights that we have to play with. We have a DRX2 that is enabled for RCL Control, and a DRX1 which is also enabled for RCL Control. The two things I'm going to need here are the handheld remote with RCL Control's wireless control activated, and the iPad. First, I click Add Light. Now you'll notice here, this actually tells you what you need to do. It says, on the RCL handheld controller, use the function arrows to navigate to wireless pairing and press the OK button. So I think first off, we should do that. Use the function buttons and navigate to wireless pairing and press the OK button. At the top here, it's given me a code, and this is generated by the remote. Number 2, on the iPad, enter the code displayed on the RCL handheld controller, then tap Next. Pairing code is valid for 5 minutes. So now I can delete that code and type in my one, which is Lima, Tango, Yankee, Whiskey, Romeo, Yankee, the number 8, and J for Juliet. And then I'll click Next. And then we follow the screen. On the RCL handheld controller, press the Target button and aim at the Luminaire's sensor until it starts flashing blue. So the Target button is the red button, and I'm going to aim the remote at these lights until they start flashing for me. And you can see, without me pressing anything on the remote, they are flashing white. Now if I want to pair this black DRX2, I'm going to press the selection button and I'm going to select the fitting, and you can see that there's a blue LED on the bottom of the DRX2 which has started to flash. Now if we look back to the iPad, whilst that's flashing blue, it's communicating with that light, it's getting all of its motor, light and model information, and then in the middle of the screen we have that exact DRX2. Now I'm going to place that by zooming in with a pinch to zoom feature on the iPad, and then I'm going to tap on that number 1 fitting and I'm going to drag it over the location of that fitting. Perfect. Next I'm going to add another light. I click on Add Light, and now I just want to make sure that the code is the same. Currently it's LTYWRY8J, and if I were to look on the RCL handheld controller, we'll see it's the same. So I can take this handheld remote in my hand, click Next on the iPad, walk over to the second light fitting, and then select it whilst it's flashing white. Then head back to the iPad whilst it's communicating, and it speaks to the light wirelessly using its thread mesh, finds out what that light's capabilities are, and in the middle of the plan it will appear. And now I'm just going to drag it to a relatively arbitrary place on the plan. Fantastic. Now I'm actually quite happy with those two positions. I only have 2 lights. In many instances you'll have many hundreds of lights. And in those instances it would be useful to be able to group lights together. Let's say you had a ballroom that can be split up into 3 sections. Wouldn't it be nice if you could group all of the lights in ballroom 1 together, all of the lights in ballroom 2 together, and all of the lights in ballroom 3 together? So how do we group lights together? I've only added 2, but let's group those 2 together. You'll see in the top right of the RCL Control iPad app, I have 3 buttons. Currently we're on Light plan. We also have Selection, and we have Light. Under the Light tab, you'll notice we have groups, and currently we have no groups. I'm going to tap into the middle of the plan on the left-hand side to make sure that no lights are selected. If I then tap on number 1, you'll see that in the top right, the DRX2 is selected, and I can give that a group. I'm going to give that red group. I'm now going to tap into the middle of the plan again to deselect that light, and I'm going to tap on the second fitting, a DRX1 in this case. I'm going to group it as group 1. Now, in this case, I've done that individually. I've tapped on one light, I've then given it the red group. I've tapped on another light, I've given it the red group. But I can tap on all of the lights together. If I wanted to, I could press Select All. In the Selection tab, it will select both lights. I could then go to the Light tab in the top right and then change their group to the blue group, if I so wanted to do so. Let's say now I've added all of the lights I want to into my system and I've grouped them all how I want to group them. How do we now interact with the RCL Control app to move the spotlights? Well, currently we're still in the edit mode. To exit the edit mode, I'm going to press Gallery in the top left. I'm then going to click Done in the top left. And I'm going to click Save. And that is going to save all of the settings into the iPad and into the Mediator box. Now this is the first screen that you would see on opening the iPad. I'm going to tap into that light plan. And here is my plan with the two blue group lights right there. First off, I'm going to tap on number 1, and you'll hopefully remember this is a DRX2 fitting. On the right hand side of my iPad app is a control panel. I have a dimmer, which is a little grey bar below the 0%, and I just slide my finger along that to change its intensity. And you can see on the screen there that indeed the intensity is going up and down. I also have the ability with this fitting to change its beam angle. I have a little disc with a circular beam in the middle, and if I drag my finger from the center to the outside, you'll see the beam angle change. And absolutely in reality, the beam angle is changing too. This particular fitting is equipped with a lens vector panel, which is an electronically adjustable optic. And we can change its beam angle from 14 degrees all the way out to 55. Once I'm happy with its aiming, its dimming level, I may wish to move the fitting. If you look down into the bottom left of the screen, you'll see a joystick. In the middle of that joystick there is a red button. I can either press the red button and move my finger around, or I can press anywhere in that ring and move my finger around. If I want to pan the fitting to the left, I'll drag my finger to the left and the fitting will rotate. If I drag it to the right, it will rotate to the right. The further away from the center I drag my finger, the quicker that will move. If I want to tilt the fitting, I would go up or down. And if I wanted to do a mixture of those two, I could go diagonally and it would pan and tilt at the same time. That is one way of moving our spotlights, and I think is a very, very easy way. Now, network latency dependent, when I remove my finger from the screen, the fitting will stop. If there is a very congested network, there may be a short delay before that happens, but that process means it's very easy to aim a spotlight at whatever subject you're trying to aim at. There is a different method of control, however, and that is using two jog wheels. If you look into the bottom right of the screen, you have the joystick, and just above it, it says tilt angle. Just above that, there are 3 buttons. Currently, we're on the middle button, which is the joystick. But if I click onto the button to the left of it, we'll see a pan jog wheel. I can tap anywhere on this jog wheel, and it brings up a little amber button. Now, currently, the fitting is doing a homing sequence because I've just given this fitting power and it doesn't know where it is. Now it's homed itself, which, for those of you that don't know, a homing sequence enables a fitting to return to its 0 position, and therefore it knows when it needs to travel back a certain number of degrees, it knows where to go to because it knows where it's come from. And I can drag my finger around and the fitting will move. You'll also notice that there is a trail, almost like a comet's trail, following that little dot. And that is telling you that the light is moving to that position. This works exactly the same way for tilt. If I were to click on the 3rd button in that string, I get a tilt angle jog wheel. I can tap anywhere in that wheel and that fitting will tilt. It's first going to go through its homing sequence in tilt, just so it knows where 0 is, and therefore it knows where to tilt to. And now it's there. I can drag my finger on the jog wheel, and the light fitting will go to that position. If I wanted to send a single fitting or many fittings down, I also have a little home button, which you can see to the left-hand side of the jog wheel and to the top of it. Just above where it says pan, there's a little picture of a house. If I click on that house, it will send this fitting to its home position, which in the case of a DRX2 is perpendicular to the track and pointing straight down. Let's say I have a number of spotlights on a ceiling and I just want to be sure that I'm going to move the right fitting. How do I identify one fitting from another fitting? Well, if I tap into a blank space of the plan, no fittings are selected. Now I know I want to move fitting number 2, which we know is this white DRX1 fitting. I'm going to click on fitting number 2, but of course I don't know if this is the right fitting because this is one of hundreds. Now, in the top right-hand screen of the iPad, just below where it says DRX1 fitting 2, that's what the 2 stands for, you'll see that there is a little tag, a little luggage tag button. That is called the Identify button. If I tap on Identify, and then you look at the fitting, it is now flashing pink. And that is telling me, if I press that Identify button again, I am this light fitting. Are you sure you want to control me? Now you know which one I am. And in this case, yes, I absolutely do want to control the DRX1 because the DRX1 has even more features than the DRX2. It's not as powerful though. If I go back to the iPad, I do want to control DRX1. I have a little dimmer button just there, and I slide my finger up to increase its dimming level. And you can see absolutely it is dimming. To the right of the dimmer button, I have a little thermometer button. I'm going to tap on the thermometer button, and in this case, I can change its color temperature from a warm 2200 Kelvin to a cool 3800 Kelvin. And you can see on the screen that indeed it's changing its color temperature. Now for the dimmer and the color temperature, if I wanted to control the dimming level by finer granularity than just percentage increments, I'm going to tap on the dimmer and then drag my finger down the screen. And then when I move it left to right, it will move in much finer increments, like this. Tap on the screen, drag my finger down, and then when I move left and right, you can see we're moving up by points of a percentage. And then, happily, I can drag it up and down quickly if I need to. It's also quite possible that you want to select multiple lights at one point, maybe send them all to the same positions, maybe you want to send them all home, for example. But you may also want to dim them all to a specific level. Now there are a couple of ways we can do this. I can either tap on both fittings, so tap on fitting 1 and fitting 2, just like this, tap on fitting 1, tap on fitting 2, and you can now see that there are 2 lights selected. The first dimmer you get given is what we call a bounce slider. And this is a slider which you can dim up and dim down. And the reason it's a bounce slider is because you might have 2 fittings and one is higher than the other one. And you might want to dim them down, but in scale to one another. If, however, you just want to snap them to the same level, you can do that by pressing the dimmer button to the right of the bounce slider and then selecting a specific dim level. And now both of these fittings have gone to the same 49% dim level. Again, if they were both color tuning, you could change their color temperature in much the same way. They are both zooming fittings, so I could change their beam angles as well. That's not the only way to select lights though. I could select all of the lights together, or I could select a specific group of lights and dim those. I'm going to click into the blank space of the plan again, and then I'm going to click on selection. I now have a menu. Select, I can either select all, if I click on that, it will select all of these lights together. I can deselect all, I could click on a group. Now in this case I only have one group because I've only got 2 lights in the same group. But I could have 3 for the 3 ballrooms, and I could click on group 2, group 1, whatever I want it to be. I can also rename these groups. And now I can dim all of the lights in that group at one time. With all the group 2 lights selected, I would click on the Control tab in the top right and then use my dimmer again to dim both of these lights, and you can see that indeed they are both dimming up and down together. With them both selected, I'm going to go back into a control mode. In the bottom right, I'm going to aim them all to the same position. Now, the DRX2, the black fitting at the beginning, that has homed itself in pan and tilt. The DRX1 purposefully wasn't homed yet, it was just plugged in and given power. So I know if I want to send it to a specific position, it's going to want to home itself first. Now I can either do that by sending it to a specific tilt or pan angle, or I can send a recalibration signal. How I do that? In the bottom right of the panel, where you see the joystick, just above where you see angle, you see a button that's the home button, and then to the right of the home button, you can see what we call a recalibration button. If I press this button, it's going to send a full recalibration or a full homing sequence command to both of those fittings, and they're going to rotate fully in pan and tilt, find their zero positions, and then go back to where they were. Now, if I press the home button, I know both of these lights are going to go to this perpendicular and straight down positions. So if you ever get a problem where one fitting isn't doing quite what it should do, just send it a recalibration. And that way, it will go to its home position or to its correct scene position. Scenes. Let's talk about scenes. Why are scenes useful? Well, any of you that have worked in a ballroom know that setting up tables and lighting for those tables becomes incredibly time consuming. Wouldn't it be nice if you could press a few buttons and send all of the lights to their positions and then take your tables and put them under the beams of light? Well, first we need to make some scenes. I'm going to click on Scenes. And in the Scenes tab, you can see that scenes allow you to capture and record the light's properties and orientation of selected lights. To create a new scene, select the lights that you want to capture, then tap Capture Scene. So I want to select both of these lights. Now I know both of these lights are in their home position. I'm going to either tap on both individually, or I could go to Selection, Select All, go back to Scenes, then I'm going to click on the Edit button. I'm now going to click on Capture Scene. This now communicates with both the lights and the mediator box. Make sure it knows where both of these lights are meant to be, what their dimming levels are, what their beam angles are. And now you can see I have a Scene 1. If I tap on Scene 1, I can rename it. Now in this case, we know it's a home scene. I can also recapture it if I've changed it. So in this case, let's say I have a scene that I've loved for years, but I don't actually use that fitting anymore. I can go and turn that fitting off, and then I can recapture the scene and resave that scene with that fitting off. Below recapture, it says address. If I click on where it says undefined, I can give this scene a Dali go-to scene number. I'm going to give this scene 0 and then click back. So now once I click done, I have a home scene that is also tied to Dali Network Scene 1. Now in this case, how does this work? Well, you will have a Dali network potentially in a ballroom or in a restaurant, and you have a button for Scene 1 that will dim some other lighting down. It might change your blind positioning. But in this case, it can also trigger a go to scene command and send all of these lights to home. Now, I would never suggest you use Scene 1 as your home command, because all of your careful work when someone presses 1, the most pressed button in a ballroom, will send them all to 1. But it shows you that you can allocate a scene number from a Dali go to scene command to a scene in the mediator box. And if I want to recall that scene, I would press home. I'm now going to move the lights a little bit. I'm going to select them all, go to Control, and I'm going to send them both to some arbitrary pan and tilt angles. Maybe a little bit more tilt, just so it's obvious. Once I'm happy with their positions, I'm going to save a new scene by clicking into Scenes, clicking Edit, clicking Capture, communicates with those lights, finds out their new positions, and then builds a new scene called Scene 2. I'm actually fairly happy with the name, but I'm just going to call this one Test 1. And I don't need to give this a Dali address, so I'm just going to click back on the scenes button and click done. It's now saved those two scenes. So now I can switch between the home button by pressing home and sending these lights to their home positions, or test 1 by pressing test 1 and sending them to their test 1 scene positions. So very quickly there, we've added scenes. We've actually given one a Dali address as well. And we can switch between the two scenes very, very quickly just by pressing on scenes and then the specific scene number we want. Is there a quicker way to control a specific area? Absolutely. If I press on the top left button of the iPad where it says Gallery, it brings me back to the Zone 1 plan area. You'll notice in the top right of the plan, there are 3 little dots in a grey circle. If I tap on that button, it brings up some interesting sliders for me. Now, I have 2 bounce sliders, bounce dimming sliders, and I can dim either the whole light plan, which is LP, or I can dim group 2 right from this screen without having to go into the settings, select all of group 2 and dim them. I would just dim my finger slider to dim the lights, and you'll see the lights on the screen dimming up and down together just by moving that slider. Equally, if I wanted to send them all to a specific scene, I could just press on that scene in the home button here where it says H for home, H for home. Tap on the home button and those fittings will go to that scene. So that gives you a very quick way of sending an entire space to a specific scene or changing its dimming levels. What else should we know how to do? Well, I think it's very important that now we've set all this time aside for adding lights to the mediator, setting scenes, building groups, we should export this configuration and save it. How do we do that? Top left of the iPad app, you'll see an edit button. Hit that edit button again, enter your password. In my case, it's ABCDEFGH, and click connect. It's now communicating with the mediator box, communicating with the lights as well, getting all of their positions, making sure everything's happy. And now we're in the edit command. In the top right-hand corner, there is a little gear symbol, a cog symbol. If I tap on that, I can bring up some settings. This is where I can give a name to my mediator box. So it could be whatever hotel in wherever city it is. It also tells me about my iPad configuration is a version 9, my mediator is a version 8. And it also enables me to export the configuration. I'm going to click on export. I'm going to click on configuration because I can just export the scenes, but in this case I want to export everything. I'm going to click on mail because I want to export this as an email, and I'm going to send this to myself, which is mn@precisionlighting.co.uk, and give it a name, configuration. Perfect. And then I'm going to click send. So now I've exported the entire configuration of my mediator box and all of the lights out as an email. Should something happen to that mediator box or the iPad, it doesn't matter. I have that file. I can rebuild the system within a few minutes as opposed to the hours it may have taken you to set up that entire space. I can now click close and I can click done. But before I click done, I'm going to enter the light plan again within the edit mode. I'm going to tap on number 1 fitting. And this gives me an edit mode for that fitting, including a few other settings. So below all of the group colors, I also have network groups. And this enables me, just like we did add a Dali scene number to a specific scene, I can add a Dali group number to a specific color of lights. I have group 2 selected. I click on network groups, currently undefined. And why not group 2? I'm going to give Dali 2. So I tap on the number 2, press back, and now you can see that group 2 is allocated Dali 2. So I can dim by broadcasting a dim to global Dali 2, and I'll dim all of the lights in that group. And then right at the bottom, below that, you'll see some information. This gives you the mediator name. It also tells you how strong the signal is. Going into fitting 1, it's incredibly strong because in this case the mediator box is a few meters away. The strength of the signal is very high, and the outgoing strength is also very high. And the fact that it's showing an incoming signal and an outgoing one means that that particular fitting is acting as a repeater for that signal too. When you set up an installation of RCL Control for the first time, I would always recommend adding spotlights first, which are closest to that mediator box, because the spotlights can then add to that mesh and extend the range of the signal. If you were to start adding fittings right at the far end of the room, you might not actually get a signal that far at the beginning. Whereas if you start near the mediator and work your way out, the signal travels much, much further. The fittings also auto-configure their topology, their network topology. So one fitting could be a repeater, but if it no longer needs to be a repeater, it will turn off that repeater and save energy. Very clever, and that is one of the benefits of using thread mesh. If we go back to the iPad here, I can click on the top left, which is the gallery. I can then click Done, click Save. It communicates with everything else in the system and then saves this into the iPad. And then, just as before, I can zoom into that space, pinch to zoom, click on a fitting, and then start moving it. Fantastic. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. As a quick recap, to make RCL Control work, you'll need an iPad with the RCL Control app. I would always recommend having a light plan ready so that when you start adding lights to it, you have the light plan to add the lights onto it. You'll need a handheld remote, critically with the wireless pairing mode enabled. You're going to need RCL Control fittings, RCL Control mediator box connected to the same network that the iPad has a connection to also. There are full instructions available for RCL Control, but I hope this video has given you a very quick insight as to how it works. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.